Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. A very, very warm good evening to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. I welcome you all to this weekly webinar where we will be discussing mains answer writing specifically. I hope all of you are doing good and also a very, very, very happy Republic Day to all of you. India is celebrating its 74th Republic Day today. I hope all of you woke up on time and saw the amazing Republic Day parade that we had. Today, we'll be discussing some important topics that have been in the news, and more importantly, we will be discussing the kind of questions that can be expected and how to form the answers to those questions. So good evening once again. We'll wait for a couple of minutes, let others also join in. Once we have the class full, we will begin in just a couple of minutes. Thank you so much. Hello, 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 everyone. Those who are joining in right away. Hello, hello. Happy Republic Day. Okay, I want to test how many of you actually attended or saw the Republic Day parade today. Tell me, or this is a slight trivia for you. Tell me, which was the first state that took out the tableau today? As you know, there were many states that participated that took out their tableau. Which was the first state that actually went ahead with the tableau? Okay, a lot of answers. Uday is the first one to give the answer. Okay. Many of you have given the correct answer. Okay, you seem to be very serious people who have attended the Republic Day parade. Yes. Andhra Pradesh was the first one. Those who are saying Ladakh, I think you woke up slightly later because by the time that you woke up, I think some states were gone already. Perfect. Yes, yes. So you all know there is a lot of significance attached to the Republic Day parade. India has had a very long history of Republic Day parades, and it is not randomly that we decide which would be the chief guest or who would be the chief guest at Republic Day parades. Whenever India has to decide who shall be the chief guest, who should we invite as the chief guest, there's a lot of thinking that is done behind it. It is a very good indication of where our foreign policy is going, which is a nation with which we want to develop good relations, etc. And there have been very interesting guests in the past. If you see in the past, there have even been guests from Pakistan to our Republic Day parade. I don't know how many of you know this. There have been guests from Pakistan also. There have been guests from multiple nations. If you look at how many nations or have actually sent most of the guests, you will see UK has sent a lot of guests. From UK in the 1950s, we usually invited people from UK to take part. Even Queen Elizabeth took part as a chief guest. Lord Mountbatten also took part as a chief guest. We have also had constant participation from nations such as USSR or Russia, whatever you want to call it. From France also, interestingly, a lot of participation. From Bhutan also, there has been participation. Only one American president, Barack Obama, who has come in. So it's a very varied and a very important list, which shows you what is the thinking behind India's foreign policy. We have also had multiple guests in some years. We have had the heads of all ASEAN nations coming in when Prime Minister Modi first took the office. So a lot of very interesting things actually can be seen in our Republic Day parade as a chief guest. This year, as you know, the Egyptian president was here. So it also makes sense for us to read a bit about India-Egypt relations, because usually we don't read a lot about India-Egypt relations. We usually read about India's relationship with bigger nations, with the Western powers, etc., or in the Middle East. But somehow we usually ignore India's relation with Egypt. So it's a good time to read about that as well. Perfect. So a lot of you have joined in already. So thank you so much for joining in. Yes, I know it is a national holiday and many people would have thought it's a holiday, so they would not be coming. But since you are here, let's begin the session that we have for you today. Before we begin, just a reminder very quickly. As you know, the prelims test series for 2023 is ongoing. I seriously hope all of you who are planning to appear for the 2023 prelims examinations are taking part in the test series. So make sure that you do take part there. And keep a track of your score as well. See how much are you actually scoring and see is it improving or is it not improving. These are the topics that we will be having for you today. So we'll have a discussion on these 5 and we'll also be seeing how to write certain answers related to these topics. We will first start a discussion with e-governance in health service delivery. We have taken up this topic specifically because this was covered in the Kurukshetra magazine. So we have taken up this topic from Kurukshetra magazine, a very important topic. Then we'll be discussing about the basic structure doctrine, that has been in the news because of a lot of statements being made by our vice president. Then China's declining population, the debate on demographic dividend, we'll be discussing that. Then India's role as leader of the global south, and then the Satluj-Yamuna canal. These are things that we'll be discussing. I already have a question, by the way. The question that I have is from Milton. Why a beating retreat ceremony is conducted at Wagah-Atari border? That is not the beating retreat ceremony. The beating retreat ceremony, the official one, is in front of the Rashtrapati Bhavan at the Raisina Hills. At Wagah border, what you see actually is a kind of a spectacle that is put forward. That's a kind of a spectacle that happens every single evening. That is more to ensure that people have that feeling of nationalism. See, you have to ensure that when you are living in such a big country, the people should actually feel proud of their country. People should actually feel connected to the idea of nationalism, to the idea of our armed forces. And many nations do these kind of things. So for India, I don't know how many of you have been to the Wagah border ceremony. If you go there, you would also know that when you see that parade going on for that 1 hour, 2 hours, you feel so proud and so energetic that you say that I'll do anything for my country. So it's a significant area. It's a significant location. You also know there's Pakistan around the corner. So it's more of a spectacle. It's more about bringing people towards the idea of nationalism, not any constitutional importance. So don't view it from the point of view of constitution. Then, okay, I'll take one more question, then we'll go ahead. Misbah is saying, how much score should we get in prelims test series? Ideally, above 100 is a good score. It all depends on the level of questions, basically, level of the paper. More than 100 would be a very good score that you should feel very happy about. If you are scoring above 75, I would say you should not be sad. Above 75 is a decent score because above 75 means if you just answer 5-6 questions more correctly, you would be able to get your score to 100. But if you're already scoring above 100, excellent score. I don't think that you should be worried. If you're scoring less than that, you still have some time and you still should improve that. Perfect. So I'll take more questions as we go ahead. Let's first start with the discussion that we have for you today. As and when we go ahead, we will be taking more questions. So let's not worry about that. Okay. Let's start with the first topic that we have at our hand today, that is e-governance in health service delivery. Now, what exactly is this? How does it work? Let's try and understand that. As I told you, the reason that we have taken up this topic is that it is from the Kurukshetra magazine. It was covered recently. Very, very important magazine that covers very important issues. Now, if you see this topic, there are 2 very important things that you need to understand. First, it is talking about e-governance and it is talking about health service delivery. In very simple terms, let's try and understand what they are trying to say. The topic here is trying to say that if India has to improve our health services, especially in the rural areas, because when you see Kurukshetra magazine, most of their articles, most of their editions are focused on the rural areas, rural economy, rural health, rural infrastructure, etc. So the topic here is, if we utilize e-governance in our healthcare systems, we can make them much, much better. Now, what is e-governance? Let's try and understand that. In simplest of terms, when the government makes use of technology, be it in the form of new apps, be it in the form of communicating to the people, making their lives easier, that is called e-governance. So when the government makes use of technology, when the government makes use of certain devices, apps, etc., to make the lives of the people better in any fray or any sector of the society, that will be called e-governance. This article mainly is about how can e-governance make the lives of the citizens better. Before I go ahead, I'll give you 1 or 2 very simple examples so that you can understand. When we had this COVID-19 wave, when we came out of it at the later half of COVID-19, there were two important apps that everyone got to know about. Almost every one of you would have downloaded these apps, at least one. You would have downloaded the Arogya Setu app, and you were all would have downloaded the CoWIN app, right? All of you would have downloaded these. I was going to write CoWIN app, then I realized app is not correct, it is app. Okay, so the COVID app, the CoWIN app, and the Arogya Setu app, these are the two things that all of you would have downloaded once, apart from, yes, apart, as Chaitanya said, apart from Zoom. So let's keep Zoom aside because that's not a part of e-governance, that is a part of how you connect to your bosses. So these two apps would be downloaded by almost everyone at least once. I'm sure all of you know what do they do. Arogya Setu app would cover or would try to track you, your status, the people who you interact with, did they have COVID, could you actually contract COVID from someone. You would also remember a time in later half of 2020, 2021, most of the public places that you used to go to, you had to first show your Arogya Setu app status. Remember? Now people have forgotten about it, but even a few months back, either you had to show your vaccination certificate or you had to show this Arogya Setu app status. So this is a primary example of government using technology to make the lives of the people better. As simple as that. Many other countries have done this. Then CoWIN in fact was such a great example of how government can use technology to make lives of the people better. So much so that India, in fact, gave or offered the CoWIN app platform to many other developing nations also. Many nations wanted this platform, so we told them or we taught them how to make this kind of a platform. You also know CoWIN app basically was an app using which you could book your vaccination slots so that you don't have to go and line up. In the initial days, even after you book the slot, you have to line up, but at least it was a way for the government to streamline the entire process. These two are standout examples of how e-governance, of how the use of technology can make governance so much better. Now, apart from these also, there have been multiple initiatives. I'm giving you these two examples because these are universal, because these are the two apps which every single one of you would have downloaded. Then there are certain other apps that we have specifically for certain areas. We have certain apps to deal with certain diseases, such as the related to tuberculosis, related to other types of diseases. In fact, now you even have initiatives on the side of the government that if you have certain mental illness, if you had suicidal thoughts, then you can contact on these numbers, etc. So all of that indicates the fact that the government can use e-governance to make the lives of the people much, much, much better. Now, there is a big problem that we have in India in the healthcare system. You also know this. In the healthcare system, there is a big divide between private and public. You also know this, that if you can afford it, and you fall ill, there would be no one who would like to go to a government hospital if you can afford it, right? Let's not talk about AIIMS. Let's keep AIIMS aside, that's an exception. But apart from AIIMS, you also know if you can afford it, almost everyone would opt to go for a private doctor, private hospital, but you would not want to go to a government hospital. And there are very good reasons for that. You don't see enough infrastructure. There are a lot of lines that are waiting for the doctor to actually come and see them. In case of private hospitals, private doctors, you can call, book an appointment, go on time and get the checkup done. In case of a government hospital, if a hospital clinic opens at 10 a.m., people start lining up from 6 a.m. onwards. Even if you reach at 10 a.m., the opening time, you would still be the 200th person in the queue. You would have all seen that. If you have not seen that, you are the lucky ones. I can just remind you that. But a lot of population of India still goes to government hospitals, still goes to these public clinics where not a lot of technology has come in. So the idea is that we should have many more technologies and apps to solve this kind of a problem. Now, what has the government done in terms of how to improve healthcare in India? Let me give you certain examples. We had the National Health Policy of 2017 that talks about having a digital ecosystem, recognizing the role of Internet of Things, wearables, clouds, etc. All these things. Now, let me give you a very simple example. See, when you go to any doctor, the doctor will ask you, when was this problem, when did this problem last occur to you? The doctor will ask you, can you show me the reports? What tests did you conduct? If you have any disease that goes on for a long duration of time, you would have to maintain a proper file for it, right? You have all these documents, these test reports, etc. You carry it with you whenever you go to a doctor. All of you are familiar with these kind of problems. However, it's a very easy, simple problem to solve. You can very easily have one single app where the doctor can just input your Aadhaar number, and from the Aadhaar number, the doctor should be able to see what are the different types of tests that you have conducted earlier and what are the reports of that test, rather than you have to carry it every single time with you. Every doctor that you go to, you have to have a new test altogether, get the other new test done so that they can have an updated report. All of that can be solved by using that kind of a technology. Niti Aayog also in 2018 proposed a national health stack with an objective of giving countries futuristic digital health system. So all of us, all the people are trying to solve the idea of how to improve India's healthcare system with the use of technology. Because in a country of India's scale, especially in the rural areas where we do not have enough doctors, you need to make use of technology. You would have seen many companies now coming up with many inventions. Inventions such as, you might not need to go to the doctor, you might even have a doctor consultation online or on video. If you have used certain apps, I'll not take names of those apps. There are many apps these days where you can book doctor appointment and even have online video consultation as well. All these things come in very handy, especially if you cannot access the doctor directly. Yes, there are, for some things you have to go to a doctor directly to get it checked up, but for certain other issues, you can actually consult online and the doctor may be able to provide you a solution thereon. All these things the government is trying to ensure. The government is also working on single health ID and profile for every citizen. This is the idea I was talking about. That if everything is linked to my Aadhaar card anyway, then rather than the government actually trying to, or rather than every single doctor asking me different questions about when did you get the test, what were the reports the last time, every doctor should be able to access a database where if they have or if they input my health ID, they should be able to see whatever test I have conducted. These are the kind of ideas that have been implemented in some other nations. When you talk about nations which have used a lot of technology, one example you can talk about is Estonia. Estonia in Eastern Europe is considered as the world's first 100% digital nation. For any government service, you do not have to go out of your house. Everything is done online. India can also do the same. The problem being that we still lack certain infrastructure. We still have lack of knowledge amongst the people of how to use technology, and we'll discuss some of that. As I told you, there are certain challenges in our healthcare system. First, the fragmented sector, meaning that, see, our healthcare sector has a lot of different types of hospitals, different types of doctors, etc. Some are private hospitals, private clinics, and there are some that are run by the state government, some that are run by the central government, some that are run by the armed forces, etc. So we have a lot of different types of healthcare infrastructure in the country. That is why they all run on different types of systems. This is why adopting same technology for everyone is not that easy. For example, let's take a very simple example. Let's say the government implements the same idea that there's an app where the doctor will input your health ID and he will get all the information about your health. Who should the government give access to for using this app? That is a big problem. If someone sees your personal medical information, they can misuse it also. So government has to make sure only the qualified doctors, only the doctors who are treating you can get access to that. Since we have different types of healthcare systems in the country, it is difficult to digitize all of them together on one single platform. Similarly, most of the hospitals, and a lot of hospitals, especially which are not very advanced, would not have the kind of IT system that is required for these kind of things. So government also has to give them technological support. Government also has to give them enough support so that they can use that technology. Many doctors may not be very familiar with how to use these technologies. See, a lot of doctors, let's say who are in their 60s or 70s right now, who are very experienced doctors, they might not be very comfortable with using this kind of technology. So you have to accept that fact as well. There are other issues as well, such as the lack of shared standards. A lot of times, and it might happen with you also, let's say you go to a doctor and the doctor asks you for getting a blood test done. And you tell him that I got a blood test done just 3 days ago. You show him the report. The doctor might say, no, I don't trust this lab. Get a new lab test done, get a new blood test done from the lab that I am telling you. Because the last blood test, I don't trust that lab, that's a bad lab, whatever. So the patient has no option but to go ahead and get the lab test done again. Because there's no proper standard that is set. That is why we should actually work towards that. We should have proper health standards where the tests that are conducted, the diagnostic tools, all of that has to be accepted all around the country. All of us accept the importance of how e-governance can save a lot of lives, especially in the rural areas where we do not have enough doctors. We saw what happened in COVID. In rural areas, so many people lost their life because they just did not have access to doctors. If they could have had some other kind of infrastructure in play. Let me give you a very simple example. Every village would have a panchayat office. It would be a small one-room office, but every village would have a certain panchayat office kind of a thing. In those panchayat offices, usually there is at least one computer that is provided. If we have that kind of a system where, let's say, if people in the village can't find a doctor, can't find a hospital, they can at least come to that panchayat office and they can be connected to a doctor online from that, so that at least first level of care, primary care, is given to them. That can be a good idea. Then the government also has to make better use of data. What do we mean by that? See, running a government is not just about taking decisions about foreign policy or security of India or economy. It is a lot harder than that. For example, right now, the government does not have any official data to know how many people, for example, got fever last month or how many people caught malaria last month. Most of the numbers that you see are not coming from any official source. Many people, let's say, are suffering from some diseases which the government does not come to know about. When we have this kind of a database, when everyone's, let's say, medical records would be on one single kind of a platform, the government in that case would be able to track that and make policies because of that. So these are the kind of things that can help the government. Then the government would also be able to monitor if there are certain diseases that are increasing, if there are more and more diseases which people are suffering from. So it helps in policy making also. Because unless you know how many people are suffering from what kind of diseases, it is difficult to plan in advance. For example, if the government sees that there's a certain disease that is increasing, then ordering the medicine or the vaccines of those diseases beforehand can be a very good way for the government to go ahead. It can give accurate information. It can also allow government in ensuring that if there are certain rural areas where some diseases are spreading faster than others, then focus on those areas. All these things can become much better just by the use of e-governance if the government goes ahead in this sector. Now, there are a lot of initiatives already taken. I gave you some examples earlier. We talked about Arogya Setu, we talked about COVID, and there are many other examples like this. The reason why you need to know these examples is, especially when you attempt a question from governance. In GS2, when you read about governance, and in GS2 paper, when you have governance related questions, the good way to attempt those questions, or the necessary thing, in those questions is that you have to give real examples in those questions. You have to tell what are the kind of initiatives the government has been taking. You have to tell either about the national government initiatives or the certain state governments to make your answer much more relatable. These are some of the initiatives. This is not any list which is complete. This is not an exhaustive list. You can keep on adding to it. There are a lot of other examples that keep on coming in. You read the newspapers, read the current affair magazines. I would suggest you to write down certain examples of how government has been using technology in the field of healthcare. There is e-hospital management system. There is Mera Aspatal system where you can actually give feedback in the hospital. There is e-Sanjeevani system through which you can have telecommunication. You can consult a doctor without visiting. There is Swasthya. There is a lot of different types of apps that we have. For example, there's Kilkari. Kilkari, as the name suggests, is specially to train mothers who are near pregnancy about childcare, etc. These are just a few examples from the long list that you can compile, because issues such as health, issues such as rural development appear in our paper very often. So make sure that you have these kind of things, because these are very important. Okay. Now, I want you to quickly listen to me very carefully. I'll just come back here. I'm giving you 1 minute of time. I want all of you to go ahead, bring a pen and a paper if you don't have it already. If you don't have it already with you, if you're not taking notes, then I would suggest you quickly, please go, bring a pen and bring a paper or whatever notebook that you have. Because I want you all to actually start writing something. Okay, I don't want you to type it, because in the end exam you will not be typing, you will be writing. So I want you to have real answer writing practice. Okay, let's have that. Okay, you all have that? Perfect. So I hope you all have your pen, you all have your notebook or paper, whatever you want. Perfect. Now let's see this question. I don't want to write anything right now. Don't write anything right now. Just be with me. Just listen to what I'm trying to tell you, and then we will see how we go ahead. Okay, let's look at this question. The question is e-governance a panacea to all the ills of health service delivery critically analyzed? What is panacea? Panacea means solution or the answer, basically. So the question is very simple. Okay, the question is e-governance the answer to all the problems in health service delivery? Okay, I'm not asking you to write anything right now, just listen to me. Usually in these kind of questions where you are asked a simple question, is this the solution to everything? Is this the answer to this problem? Should we do this? It is very obvious. You also know when you have to critically analyze, that means you have to give both sides of the story, right? So you are expected to write about the good part also, and you're expected to write about the bad part also. Bad part means challenges, basically. So in these kind of questions, you're expected to write about the good part, that how e-governance can be helpful, or how e-governance can actually impact the lives of the people in a positive manner. And then you have to write about certain other kinds of challenges, certain other kind of issues as well. So both these things you have to write. Okay. Now let's see what exactly do we have to do and how do we actually write an answer. Mostly you also know, whenever you talk about any question, usually the question would have three parts, right? Or the answer, I would say rather, would have three parts. These three parts of the answer would be the introduction, then we have the main body, and then in the end we have the conclusion. Okay, let's try and see one by one. What do we write in the introduction part? The easiest way to write an introduction, just understand this, the easiest way to write an introduction is either go with a fact or go with a definition. Go with a fact or go with a definition, depending upon what the question is. Okay, let's see what the question was. The question was, is e-governance the panacea to all the ills of health service delivery? Now over here you have two options, either write a definition. Now the question is, what definition will you write? What is the key word here? The key word here is e-governance, because that is what the question is about. The keyword is not panacea, the keyword is not ill, the keyword is not something else. The keyword is e-governance. So either you can start with an introduction of with a definition of e-governance, That is one option that you have. Or you can write about a fact. Now, what will the fact be about? Look at the question once again. You can write a fact either about, let's say, something like, since 2020, the government of India has realized the significance of using e-governance in health service delivery and thus introduced multiple measures starting from Arogya Setu, COVID, etc. to impact the lives of the people positively. Something like this. So a fact which has one or two examples of what is happening right now. A fact which connects e-governance to health service delivery. Some of this can be your fact in the beginning. So either write a definition or write a fact in the beginning. Now, how long should it be? What should you have to write? So usually the advice that I would give everyone is spend 10% of your words in the introduction. Spend only 10% words in the introduction. So for example, you had 250 words as the word limit. So what is 10%? 10% is 25 words. 10% is 25 words. I'm sorry, I'll just write that again. Meaning that ideally, let's have a 25 word introduction. That should be good enough. Now, 25 words means maximum 2 lines, maximum 2 sentences. It is your choice. Absolutely go with a fact or definition. I am now giving you a timer of 2 minutes exactly. I'll start 2 minutes and I want all of you to write the intro in your copy, whichever copy that you have. I'm starting the time. Your 2 minutes start now. Just write an introduction. Don't type anything here, just write an introduction on the paper. Your time has already started. Either a fact or a definition, just go ahead with it. I want all of you to spend 2 minutes in writing the answer, then I'll take up your questions. Okay? Let's write something. Let's open up your hand. Okay, already done. Some people have already done. Done. Okay. Okay, already done. Okay. Those who have already done, great. Those who have not done already, no worries. Now, there are a couple of things that you can do. Either you can don't read it now. You have written it, great. Either what I want you to do is, let's try and read this after the end of the class or tomorrow. Just read what you have written and think, could you have done better? Secondly, you also know we have a student answer writing portal where you can post your answers and people, you amongst yourself, can give each other feedback as well. So you can utilize that as well. It depends entirely upon you. Anyway, so let's first go ahead. I'm sure most of you are done with the introduction part. Now, introduction, either a fact or a definition, whichever one you want to go to. Now, let's come to the main body. Main body is where 80% of your words have to be utilized. So again, if it's a 250 word answer, I would assume 200 words are to be with your main body. Now, what do you write in the main body? What do you write in the main body? Let's see here. The question is the e-governance panacea to the ills of health service delivery? Now, as I told you, critically analyze means you're expected to tell about the good points also and some challenges as well. So you first have to write about how e-governance has been helping people, or how e-governance has the potential to help India revolutionize its healthcare sector. So you have to write about the good points. I have discussed enough good points with you. Let me go back to the slide. So you can talk about these kind of things. How e-governance will be helpful. You have to elaborate points in 1 or 2 lines. How it will be very helpful for the government in making decisions. planning in advance for the entire population, be it about how to make health policies, how to be prepared for future challenges. It will also give a lot of credible data for the government. It will also ensure that the government's healthcare systems are in place. The government is prepared in advance if they have a health challenge coming up. All these things can be given, and you can write about certain examples as well, that the government has taken a few initiatives in this regard, and you can add about 3 4 initiatives as well. And then you change the paragraph and then you write, however, having said that, there are still multiple challenges in adopting e-governance in the healthcare sector in the country. What are those challenges? We discussed about the challenges as well. These are the challenges. Apart from these, also there are some other challenges as well. People might not be familiar with technology. The hospitals, doctors themselves might not be very keen on using technology. So those are also challenges about adaptation. Challenges about adaptation. See, whenever you try to introduce something new, whenever you introduce a new technology, a new app, you will always see people saying, oh, I don't need it, I'm fine with it. Remember, you talk to your grandparents will say, no, I don't need a smartphone, I don't need a smart TV. Just give me the same old TV, same old DTH. I will watch my serials. I don't want your smart TV, Amazon or Flipkart or Amazon or Netflix, etc. I don't want that. Because whenever you ask someone to adopt something new, there will always be certain section of people who would not want to do that. So there are always challenges that you have to ensure. Now that will form the part of your main body. So there has to be good points with examples, and then you have to write about challenges as well. Now, one other question that I have, and I have it here also, is it better to write in points? Is it better to write in paragraph form? See, it depends on question to question. And I'll give you two the suggestions here. First, it depends on question to question. For example, in this question, in the main body, it is good to write in points. You can write about challenges in 3 4 points and the advantages in 3 4 points. So the pointer part is good. However, whenever you think about how to write an answer, which approach to take, think of it from the examiner point of view. Let's say I am checking your copy. Okay. Now, if I am checking your copy and I am checking 15 to 20 copies in one single day, and when I check your copy, I see all the 20, 22 answers that you have written, all of these are in points. I will also feel a bit bored that I would think, don't you even know how to write in a paragraph? I, as an examiner, would want to see all the skills that you have. All right, it's a writing exam at the end of the day. So I would want to know, can you write in paragraph also, can write in points also? Because when you usually write in points, it gives a more fair outlook to your answer. When I look at your answer, it looks more fair. However, writing in points also gives an indication that maybe you don't know how to form a paragraph. That is why you're avoiding that. It's better to have a mixed approach. In some question, if you think that, like in this question, you can see that your writing in points can be a feasible approach. So please go ahead with that. But please remember, as an examiner, you will not get extra points just because you have written in point wise or you have written in paragraph. At the end of the day, the content and the presentation matters. How you have written, whether in points or in paragraph, does not really have a lot of significance. You overthink about it. That, oh, if I write in points, I'll get better marks. Nothing like that actually happens. Now, in the concluding part. Now, when you write about the conclusion part, usually the best way to write a conclusion is obviously to write the best way forward. Now, it depends on the question. See, like in question, where you have to write about the negative points also and positive points also. In this kind of a question, conclusion is easy to write. Why? When you have written in the main body about the 1 point also and the negative point also, in the conclusion, it's very easy to write. In one line, you will write that the government has to focus on removing these challenges so that adoption of e-governance can happen on a larger scale and it can have a larger impact, or something like that. When you're writing about the good points and the bad points, both of them, conclusion is not difficult to write, because you just have to write that government has to tackle the negative points or government has to overcome the challenges and it can be done in various ways, so on and so forth. It becomes challenging to write a conclusion when you only write about a factual answer. For example, let's say there's a history question. Okay, so in history question, let's say the question is about the causes of the 1857 revolt, the causes of Second World War, the causes of Russian Revolution, American Revolution, whatever. It's a factual answer. What do you write in conclusion? If they would have done that, it would have been better. No, you can't write that. You'll look like a foolish person. If they would have done that in 1857, you would have done something else. No, you can't do that. So in a history kind of a question, when you have then you have to write just factual things. Then you can't write a way forward. The way forward approach that many people say we have to write, it's not working always. It works in certain ways. For example, in science and tech questions also, way forward cannot work. In science and tech questions, for example, if you are being asked about, let's say, a specific mission or a specific kind of a technology that has come up, it's not always feasible to write about the way forward. In factual questions, you have to just summarize what you have written. In factual question, like in, let's say, 1857 revolt, those kind of questions, just summarize that because of these reasons the revolt was not successful, because of these reasons it had a large impact on the lives of the people, so on and so forth. But conclusion all depends on the kind of question that we have. In this kind of a question where you have to write both positive and negative, conclusion is the easiest thing to write. You just have to write in your own language that government must overcome challenges, the different types of challenges that we have. I'm just writing in short, so don't just think that this is the exact thing that you have to write. To increase the coverage of e-governance or to increase the reach of e-governance, something like that. Basically, just in one, maximum 2 lines, nothing more than that. Pretty easy to write an answer. Only thing that you have to do is start writing and start challenging yourself. Once you start writing, there's nothing that you can't do. Not that difficult to do. The same kind of a structure should be followed in most of the answers. Depends upon you. Should try and write an answer in this kind of structure mostly, as long as you can. Okay. I will take up a few questions. I have a few questions that are given to me before we go ahead with the second topic. Okay, let me quickly see the question that I had. Just give me a moment. Okay. There are some questions which are not related to what I am teaching, but I'll still take those up. But I'll advise you to ask question from what we are discussing. Rakesh saying, how beneficial is the Hindu Analysis live class? Can it be skipped? Watching it regularly? I would advise you to attend it live because that gives you a chance to ask questions and interact with other students as well. So I would suggest you to do that live. Bhanu has a question, how can we use Internet of Things in health service delivery? So Internet of Things mainly is about making smart devices. It's about having devices that are able to communicate with one another. So in healthcare, for example, it can be a very, very important thing. Let's assume that, I'll give you a very simple example. Have you heard of this device called pacemaker? Pacemaker. So it's a device that you actually fit inside of you that actually pumps up your heart. So let's say if there is a issue with the pacemaker should be able to communicate this to your device, which should able to be communicate with your doctor automatically. These are smart devices. So if something goes on, let's say Apple Watch that advertises like this, that if you're in a car crash, Apple Watch will automatically call your doctor or call your emergency contact. Those are examples of smart devices. That's an application of Internet of Things where devices can communicate with one another. Let's go ahead then. After saying how doctors will manage online and offline patients. That is a challenge. That is a challenge because we don't have a lot of doctors. But in private sector, they are managing it. You just have to give incentives to them. If you are telling the doctor that you have to now see 100 patients in a day, you have to give them enough incentive also to do that. So that is where the government comes in. Nazla has a question. Nazla, BBC documentary is not what I'm teaching today. If you want to have question about BBC documentary, India banning it, I suggest you to watch tomorrow's Explained. Tomorrow on YouTube, I'll be taking the Explained session where I'll be discussing about ban culture, Article 19, BBC documentary. So let's have that question for tomorrow. Amit is saying panchayats already are crowded with lots of schemes with low manpower and employees. will implementation of e-governance in health panchayat will be effective or not. I do accept your fact that India's population is always a concern at the rural area, also urban area, also. There is no denying that part. But then, just because we already have a lot of people in the panchayat doesn't mean that they should not work for healthcare sector as well. Plus, it is not every panchayat; it is always crowded with a lot of schemes. Yes, there are a few schemes that they have to be implemented, and that can be just one more scheme. But I don't think that implementing a scheme should be stopped just because they already have a lot of schemes. Rahul is saying, while writing the answer, I mentioned first topic as intro or e-governance. No, you don't write the word introduction. The word introduction is not to be written. That is for you to understand. You just start writing the answer in the first paragraph. It's not that you have to write the word intro. Okay. Then I would suggest you, Anubhav, not to send me individual introductions, because if I have, I'll have a lot of introductions. Rather, as the SME is also telling you, if you want to get your answer checked, feel free to mail it to targetias@byju's.com. They will check your answer. So rather than sending it here, I would advise you to do that. Then I have Kapil. Can we say AIMS ransomware attack exposed a weakness of e-governance in healthcare infrastructure? I won't say that it did expose the problems that technology can actually have. I won't say it's a part of e-governance, because you will anyway store your records online only. That's not the category of e-governance. Yes, we can say that AIMS ransomware attack was an example of the challenges that we still face in using technology in any sphere of life. We have ransomware attacks not just in US, not just in India, but in developed nations as US, etc. as well. So yes, it is a challenge to stay one step ahead of the hackers, which will always come with technology. Willapil has a question. Can we write our opinion as conclusion in the mains in the current matters related questions? Uh, you can, but see, I would suggest you avoid giving your personal opinion, because I have to understand something. In the larger context of things, we don't matter. So when you have to write an opinion, it's better to write an opinion given by some experts, given by some people who have given certain reports or those kind of things. So for example, I can't say that in my opinion, India reaching a $5 trillion economy will be great. So I have to quote some experts that as per this report, if we reach $5 trillion economy, these many jobs will be generated. So it will be great. So are you getting my point? Rather than writing your own view, I would advise you to take certain help from certain experts. Then I have a couple of more questions. I would suggest you to ask your question only once. I will just take up your questions after the topic ends. No point sending the same question time and time again, because that will not really be helpful. Perfect. So these were the questions given to me from this topic. Let's go ahead and move on to the second topic that we have for you today. Second topic is something that you all would have read in Indian polity. I'm very, very sure. It's one of the most important, significant topics in Indian polity, and it is also something that is in the news for a lot of reasons. Now, if you have been living under the rock, then you would not know about it. But if you are something who is keeping your eyes and ears open, you know that in the past few months, government and the Supreme Court have not been having a great friendship. From the side of the government, there have been multiple statements given from the law minister, Kiren Rijiju, especially talking about the collegium system or against the collegium system, and then the newly elected Vice President of India, Shri Jaideep Dhankar, he also has been making a lot of statements against the Supreme Court. Especially the Vice President of India, ever since he has taken up that position, has criticized the Supreme Court for a lot of things. He started his address when he attended the first Rajya Sabha session. He started his address by saying that I am very surprised when the Supreme Court struck down the NJAC. Why did the Parliament not say anything? Parliament should have said this is wrong. And recently, when he made a speech in the National Conference of Presiding Officers, where all the assembly presiding officers were invited, he made a speech where he said that yes, we have three arms of the government: legislative, executive, and the judiciary. But the legislative is the most important. They should be the one who should be given primacy, rather than the other arms actually trying to reduce their power. In simple terms, the vice president has continuously been repeating that judiciary is misusing the powers of judicial activism by coming up with new ideas from their own mind, such as the basic structure doctrine, which should be discouraged. That is his entire idea. Now, you all know basic structure doctrine ever since it has come up, it has been at the center of debate. Every government, doesn't matter if they say it openly or not, but no government likes the basic structure doctrine. But because why would they? At the end of the day, the basic structure doctrine is cutting down or reducing the power of the government only, reducing the power of the parliament to make laws. So no government likes it. Every government, when it is elected, wants complete unlimited powers in their hands, but that is not really the case. However, the difference is this time the government or the vice president, especially, is speaking up openly against it, which has not happened in the past. I don't want to give you all the background. All of you know the background in Indian polity. Just to give a very simple idea, 1973, one of the most famous cases in India's history, the Keshwanda Bharti case. That was a case where the Supreme Court, the 13-judge bench, gave a 7:6 verdict. The simple idea was the Indira Gandhi government from the end of 1960s, one by one, were making a lot of changes in the constitution. Just to give you a simple idea, the Indira Gandhi government abolished privy purses. Indira Gandhi government nationalized all the banks. Indira Gandhi government was taking over a lot of property of the people. And most of these things were being struck down in the Supreme Court. Whenever someone used to challenge their decisions, Supreme Court used to strike them down. Government, you can say in anger, or the government in retaliation, used to amend the constitutions as well. They used to amend the constitutions, and the government then was questioned in the Supreme Court, how can you amend whatever you like in the constitution? At the end of the day, that is not how the government should run. There have to be certain limitations on the powers of the parliament to amend the constitution. Then came the Keshwanda Bharti case. Keshwanda Bharti, who passed away recently, by the way. Keshwanda Bharti, he was in charge of a mutt in Kerala. The mutt's property was being taken over by the government. Finally, in this 13-judge bench, 7 judges said that the parliament can amend the constitution. However, some parts of the constitution form the basic structure of the constitution and they cannot be amended. Full stop. 6 judges on the other side said that no, government or parliament can amend everything. These 7 judges said that no, there are certain limitations to the amending powers as well. This famously became the basic structure doctrine. Now, there are a lot of pointers given, a lot of debates that happen about the basic structure doctrine. First, the biggest point of contention, which the vice president also is saying, which many people have said in the past also, basic structure doctrine is nowhere mentioned in our constitution. No law has been passed on it. It doesn't find any mention in the constitution, meaning that it is just an invention of the Supreme Court itself. How does the Supreme Court do that? All of you should be aware of one very important article of the constitution. There is article number 142. Sorry, just give me a moment. There is article 142 of the Indian Constitution that gives the power to the Supreme Court to do almost anything. Article 142 says that the Supreme Court can give any directive, any judgment that brings complete justice to the society. Supreme Court is allowed to give any directive, any judgment to bring complete justice to the society. In the name of bringing that complete justice, they can give a lot of decisions which some of you like and some of you don't like. If you like what Supreme Court does, for example, let's say you support the basic structure doctrine. You think that yes, they have done the right thing. If you like this, you will say this is judicial activism. If you're in support of this, that yes, Supreme Court should have done this, you call it judicial activism. On the other hand, if you don't like this basic structure doctrine, if you don't like Supreme Court making its own types of policies, if you're against it, then the same thing you will call judicial overreach. What I want to explain here is there is no one definition of judicial overreach or judicial activism. The same decision of the court can be called judicial activism by some people who like it, and the same decision by some other people can be called judicial overreach because they don't like it. In this case, for example, our vice president, Shri Jaideep Dhankar, he says this is judicial overreach. On the other hand, people who like it said, no, no, this is judicial activism. Now, we all know this basis structure doctrine is not going anywhere. It is here to stay. It will be here to stay. Supreme Court will not allow this to actually go away. So the question is, why is the vice president saying this time and time again? Why is it that the vice president is bringing up this issue time and time again? See, this is not the first time that the government and the Supreme Court have come face to face. Usually, whenever Supreme Court and the government come face to face, it is mostly on the question of appointment of judges in the Supreme Court. That is the real story. And you have to understand why. See, if you look at the cases in the Supreme Court, over half of the cases are that where government of India is one party. So if the government of India is party in over half of the cases in the Supreme Court, they would obviously like that the judges in the Supreme Court should be of our liking, right? If it is my case that they are hearing, I want people who are friendly to me, familiar to me to be in the Supreme Court. On the other hand, judiciary will not like it. Judiciary will say, no, 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 we want our independence. The collegium system, as you all know, through which our judges actually are appointed in the Supreme Court, in the collegium, the government has no role to play. However, the government has found a very interesting loophole. What is the loophole? See, what is the collegium? As you know, the collegium of the Supreme Court, collegium comprises of the Chief Justice of India, after him the 4 senior most Supreme Court judges, right? There are some exceptions, there are some fighters, etc. Let's not go into that. But usually that is what the collegium is. They tell the president who shall be the next Supreme Court judge. The government cannot change the name. This is the simple idea. However, the government has found a very interesting loophole. The loophole is, let's say today, the collegium gives a name to the president, okay? And the government says that, okay, we cannot change the name. We also know this. However, the government says the day that they will be appointed, we decide the day. The date of the appointment, when they will take the oath, when they will take the position, we decide that. So government says we will delay that if we don't like the judge. Why would we delay that? See, when you delay the time period, delay the day that the judge is appointed in the Supreme Court, you are lowering the possibility of that judge becoming the Chief Justice later on. Because to become the Chief Justice, you have to join the Supreme Court as early as possible, so that by seniority you get that chance. So governments, what they have been doing in the past is they have been delaying the appointment of the judges, not just in Supreme Court but in the high courts as well, which the Supreme Court does not like. And this is where the two sides have come face to face now, and a lot of statements have been given by the law minister also and by the vice president as well, about how can the government run without having its own power to appoint the judges. They are saying that look at other countries, look at US, the president decides who will be the next Supreme Court judge without any interference. Look at all these other things. How can India be this like? So these are the kind of debates that are happening right now in the country. In simple terms, this is not going to change anything. This will just give rise to a big debate between the two sides. There are people on both sides of the story. Some people who really like the basis structure doctrine. Many people, in fact, have said that our constitution was saved because of this. I'll give you a few examples. When Indira Gandhi government was in power, she was making a lot of changes in the Indian constitution. I'll give you a few examples. You all know just before the emergency actually was proclaimed, her election in the Lok Sabha was actually violated or was actually said to be cancelled by the Allahabad High Court. There was a challenge in her election that she misused her powers. The case went to Allahabad High Court. Allahabad High Court disqualified her from the Lok Sabha. She then went to Supreme Court and there was a stay order that was put. So her government introduced a constitutional amendment, and the constitutional amendment said that once the prime minister's election has happened, so whoever has become the prime minister, once they have won the Lok Sabha seat, no one can challenge their election. Just imagine that. Just because her election was cancelled by the Allahabad High Court, she introduced the constitutional amendment that if once the prime minister election has happened, no one can challenge that. Thankfully, Supreme Court struck this down, saying it is against the basic structure doctrine. I'll give you one more example. Indira Gandhi government introduced a constitutional amendment saying that if someone becomes a president or the vice president or the governor or the prime minister for even one single day, they will have lifelong immunity. Just imagine that. They will have lifelong immunity even if they become president, vice president, governor, prime minister for one single day. Even for president today, the immunity is only for their tenure of 5 years. It is not lifelong. But her government, through the amendment, wanted lifelong immunity. Thankfully, that was also struck down by the Supreme Court, saying it is against the basic structure doctrine. Now imagine, if we would not have had the basic structure doctrine, what would have been the situation? What would have been the powers of the government to make changes in the constitution? That is why many people say the basic structure doctrine is actually in the interest of the people. On the other hand, there are arguments on the other side also. The arguments are simple. See, by definition, democracy means people elect the government and that government has a right to run the country. As simple as that. Judges are not elected by us. Judges are not elected people, so they are not democratically the head of the country. Parliament is a democratically elected body. So if it is a democratically elected body, they should have the power to change the constitution, as simple as that. Supreme Court judges are not appointed by the people, number one. They are not chosen by the people. Secondly, the other problem is, even in the Supreme Court, the problem is today, one judge can say that, okay, I like this part of the constitution. This is a part of basic structure doctrine. Tomorrow, some other judge can say, no, I will add one more part. I will like this part of the constitution. So the problem here is, when you allow this, that randomly individual judges can decide what will be in the basic structure and what will not be in the basic structure, you are giving a lot of power to people who are not even elected in a democracy. That is why many people are against the basic structure doctrine as well. But in India, and in many other democratic countries, since we have the concept of checks and balances, that is how the checks and balances are maintained. Neither the judiciary, nor the parliament, nor the executive would have unlimited powers. Their powers would have certain checks and balances. Okay. On this note, this is the kind of question that you can expect. What do you understand by basic structure doctrine? Discuss its evolution and significance in strengthening the democracy. Now, let's try and take a few examples here. Very easy question, very simple question to write. The introduction would be about basic structure doctrine. What is a basic structure doctrine? You have to mention how it came up or when it came up in the Keshwanta Bharti case in 1973. I am sure all of you can define what is basic structure doctrine in a couple of lines or 3 lines. The main part would be discuss about its evolution and significance. Evolution would be, you have to give examples of how in the end of 1960s, the government was trying to change a lot of things in the constitution. You can give example of Privy Purse's case. You can give examples of government nationalizing the banks. You can give multiple examples of how they were overturned by the Supreme Court, but then the government was amending the constitution to bring in new laws. Then you have to write about its significance in strengthening democracy. Now, over here, if you actually see this, they are only asking you to write positive points, right? They are only asking you to write the significance in strengthening democracy. They are not asking you, did it strengthen the democracy or not? Do you understand it? There's a difference between that. If the question would have been, did it strengthen the democracy or was it good for the democracy or not? That would have been a different kind of a question. This question is that they are saying, yes, it did strengthen democracy. You just have to explain how. Okay. Over here, because it does not really ask you to tell negative pointers, It does not really ask you to tell negative pointers. So what you have to do here is mostly mention positive points, but in conclusion, you can write one or two negative points as well, just to balance it out. Mostly it will be positive only because you have to specify, you have been asked mainly to write about the positive points only. Just to balance, write one or two lines about negative points, just one or two. For example, if you have written, let's say, 6 to 7 lines of positive, then just one or two lines of negative would be good enough. On the other hand, if the question would have asked you this question, did it strengthen our democracy or not? Or was it positive or not? Then you can balance 50% positive, 50% negative. Then that's a different thing altogether. On the other hand, when you write like this, when you are asked about specifically the positive pointers, then it is expected that you spend much more words in the positive pointer, just one or two lines in the negative in the concluding part. This is just a factual question. You can write in the introduction if you want that there has been an ignited debate about the basic structure doctrine because of the Honorable Vice President of India raising this issue multiple times. You can mention that. There's no problem with that because it's a fact. Whatever are facts, you can mention that. It is a fact that the Vice President of India is criticizing this. It is a fact that it has come up in the debate multiple times. So it's very easy to mention. There's no problem with that. You don't have to be afraid of mentioning whatever is a fact. Okay? And you can write this answer in very, very simple terms. It's not a very difficult question to answer. I'll take up a few questions from your end. I want all of you to try and write this kind of an answer. Okay. One more thing. Okay, very quickly. One more thing. In this question, there's a question that I had. 10%, when I said write 10% words in the introduction. So in this topic also, introduction can be simple. As I told you, the debate around the basic structure doctrine has been ignited once again with the Vice President of India raising questions about the basic structure doctrine. Full stop. That can be introduction. As simple as that. You have to give context, right? Why the question has been asked, why is it in the news? That can be introduction. And then come to the main body, define the basic structure doctrine in 2-3 lines. First paragraph, then write about the positive points, and then in the concluding part, write about the negative points. As simple as that. Let me take a few questions quickly. Okay, I have a question. Why such comments are not considered as contempt of court? See, you have to understand the idea of contempt of court. Contempt of court is when you are putting up charges or allegations against the court which are not proven. For example, if Vice President would have said that the judges brought basic structure doctrine because they took money, because of this, because of that, if it would have been against an individual judge, that would have been the case of contempt of court. Having said that, it is the Supreme Court that decides what will be under the definition of contempt of court and what will not be. So if the same thing you would have said or I would have said, maybe we would have come under contempt of court because it is them who decide the interpretation. But usually it is when you actually criticize putting these kind of allegations that they have taken some bribe or because of this that they have done, that is where it comes under this contempt of court issue. Raza has a question. How can we say that we the people is the source of Constitution of India as our elected representatives are at par with appointed bodies, executive judiciary? The preamble itself says we the people give ourselves the Constitution. So that line entirely means that we the people are the ones who are giving the Constitution, plus the representative of the Constituent Assembly that we had. They are the ones who are indirectly elected by the people only. Then the other part, you saying that appointed body, executive judiciary are at par. I'm not sure how you're connecting the two. The source of the Constitution is we the people, because we the people had elected those people who made the Constitution. As simple as that. I'm not sure how you're connecting the two. Meghanji saying, can we mention Indira Gandhi example in support of this doctrine? Absolutely. Whatever are facts, you are free to mention those. How immunity goes against basic structure doctrine? As per the Supreme Court, this is against the right to equality. This is what the Supreme Court said. Right to equality, immunity you can give for that tenure because they are at a very important constitutional position. But once they are out of that position, you don't have lifelong immunity, because that will go against right to equality as per Supreme Court. Saurabh is saying, is isn't the chairman and minister criticizing a judgment contempt of court? No, you can also criticize a judgment. As I told you, criticizing a judgment is fine. You cannot put allegations that they did it because of some other thought. That will be contempt of court. How does independence and checks and balances go hand in hand? Because independence doesn't mean complete independence. You can do whatever you want. Independence would have to be with checks and balances. You are independent to go outside your house, but then your parents will still keep some checks and balances on you, right? They can ask you, where are you? In what time would you come? You can't say, I'm an independent person. How can you ask me? So these do go hand in hand. Saidi Singh, should conclusion always be negative? Should always be right? How negative can be written? As I told you, negative can be written in the last question. When the main body is entirely positive, then in the conclusion part, to balance it out, you can write a couple of negative points. No issues with that. What can you write in negative points? I explained to you. The negative points entirely are that basic structure doctrine has certain issues. For example, the basis of the basis of doctrine is nowhere in the constitution, and it allows individual judges to decide what will be the part of basis structure depending upon their own understanding. That is an issue. Then I have a question from Jairam. Since from independence in health sector, we just say the same concerns, but still not able to solve, even we have completed 76 years, where is the problem occurring? See, mostly whenever you talk about issues in the government system of any kind, the problem will always be starting from the lack of funds. At the end of the day, you have to understand very few people in India pay income tax. We find all sorts of excuses not to pay income tax. So basically the base of population that pays taxes is very, very low. So when the government has limited amount of money, they have to see where do we have to spend it. Also, because we live in such a neighborhood, our defense budget is always very high. It has to be very high. So you have to spend a lot on pension, salary, capital expenditure of the defense sector. So it doesn't leave a lot of money for other sectors, unfortunately. We can certainly do a lot better. For example, when we say Sweden, Norway, these countries are so good, always high up in good rankings, we have to understand their system is very different. They have much lower population, so it's easy to maintain that. Plus, those countries have very high taxation rate. So those countries like Sweden, Norway expect you to pay very high taxes. They make good use of that money, but you have to pay high taxes. Almost everyone pays their taxes. So that system has still not been introduced in India. You can't compare us with other developed nations. It's a very slow journey that we have to take because of our population, but hopefully we will reach there. Okay, let's go ahead then. The next topic, again, something that was in the news all around the world, was that China's population is declining. First time in 60 years, they saw a decline in their population. Now, there are different interpretations that you take out of it. The debate mostly is about demographic dividend. Also, there have been multiple reports that have come out. India has not conducted its census. If we conduct our census, maybe we are already ahead of China. That is what many experts are saying. We are already ahead of China, just that our official population numbers have not come out. Now, China, apart from facing these issues of COVID-19, etc., have been facing this issue of population decline. The reason being, as you know, China for many years followed a one-child policy, where until there were some exceptional cases, you were not allowed to have more than one child. Now, when you have such kind of a policy and you think that it will slow down your population growth, that will happen. The population will come down. However, it will have a lot of negative impact, as we have seen in case of China. What are negative impacts? See, lower population means lesser number of people who are entering the working age population. Lesser number of people who are able to work. So lesser number of people who are able to pay taxes. When you have these kind of systems, the government has a much greater pressure for giving pension to old people, because old population becomes higher, young population entering the workforce becomes lower, and that creates a big problem, especially in a country like China, whose economic growth has been driven by manufacturing, and manufacturing requires a lot of people. So when you have slowing down of the number of people who are entering the workforce, you have a situation where you are in danger of your population, of your economic growth actually declining. That is an issue that China is facing. Now, there is no simple way to come out of it. China right now is having this issue that their total fertility rate has declined considerably. Total fertility rate means on an average, how many children is one woman expected to have in her lifetime. Usually, total fertility rate of 2.1 is expected to be the replacement level. Replacement level means if the average total fertility rate reaches 2.1 and it stabilizes, that is when it is expected the population will stabilize. Now, in China, the total fertility rate has come down to about 1.2. So obviously their population is coming down, and more importantly, the younger age group is coming down. See, in any developing nation, there is a process, there's a cycle that everyone follows. See, the first stage in any developing country is when they are just independent, newly independent. The first stage is always high birth rate and high death rate. That is always the first stage. Meaning that high birth rate means a lot of people will be taking birth. In poor countries, the replacement level is, or in fertilization rate is very, very high. Women give birth to many, many children. Look at African nations, look at what happened in India, rural sector. Because we do not have good healthcare facilities, the death rate is also high. Then the second stage, usually the second stage is high birth rate, low death rate. High birth, low death rate. Why? See, the government has to focus on two things. One, the government has to reduce or ask people to lower their fertility rate, and the government has to increase their healthcare facility also. Usually, developing countries are able to improve their healthcare facilities much better. Like in India, China, India usually, for example, is in this phase right now, where we improve our healthcare facilities, so the average age of population increases. So not many people are dying now. People are older, or they are working for longer ages, but the birth rate is still high. Then comes a third stage where you become a developed nation. In a developed nation, you have a low birth rate and you have a low death rate. This is a developed nation. Like in Japan, like in Western nations, this is the phase that we are in. We are also now transitioning from the second to the third phase. When you come from second to the third phase, the problem here will be when your population starts to decline. Number of people retiring will be higher, number of people entering the workforce will be lower. So number of people paying taxes will be lower, while the number of people dependent on government for the subsidies for different schemes will be higher. So we have a situation in China where the demographic dividend is going against them. Now, what is demographic dividend? In simple terms, demographic dividend is a situation where majority of the population is in the working age. Working age would be, let's say, 16 to 50 or 16 to 16 certain countries. Usually after 16, you're expected to enter that working age population till the age of retirement, 55, 60. That is the era where you are actually contributing to the economy. If in a country this is the majority of the population, that means you are in the phase of demographic dividend, where a lot of people are working, contributing to the economy, lesser people are dependent on that. China is now going out of it because now China has many older people, lesser younger people. It is a problem with many other nations. Look at Japan. In Japan, the average age is over 45. Average age of Japan is over 45. In India, it is still about 28. Our average age is hovering about 28, 28 and a half. Japan is over 45, close to 50. Italy also close to 50 average age of a person. That is why India right now is in an advantageous position. Why? India has the demographic dividend advantage because we still are in an era where we still have majority of our population in the working age right now. In India, usually we regard it as 20 to 59. As you can see here, we are still at a stage where number of people in this population is increasing. So our demographic dividend is still increasing. More and more people are entering the workforce. More and more people are now paying taxes. In China, it is actually coming down. So India has a big advantage over China right now. However, it is not just an advantage that you can get. It is said that most probably by 2035, till 2035, India will have the best time period. So this is close to 2035. After 2035, number of young people in India's population might start to come down, because again our elders will go higher and our younger people entering the population might come down. So in this era, India has to take advantage of this. How? Just having more people in the working age population doesn't automatically mean that they will earn money or they will contribute taxes. We have to give them enough skills as well. That is why the government has to focus a lot on skill development. Just having more people in the population doesn't mean that they will always be helpful. We have to ensure that the skill development happens at a larger scale. One more thing that we have to understand. India, I don't know how many of you know this, India has the world's largest number of English speaking population. Do you know that? The country that has the largest number of English speakers is India, not US, not UK, not Canada. No, it is India that has the world's largest number of English speakers. Now, what is the advantage that we have? In case of China, in case of Japan, since their education mostly has been in their national language. In China, they have Mandarin, they have Cantonese. In Japan, they speak the Japanese. Their population or their people are not very well versed in the English language. So India has an advantage where we can be net exporters of talent. We can be net exporters of talent. So for example, as I told you, in developed nation, look at US, look at Europe, many of the developed nations lack people in their working age population, lack skilled population. So India can actually export a lot of people, and we usually do. But the problem is, it's not that just because we are young, we can go to any country. You also have to have skills. So Indian government has been working on providing more skills. This is where our education system also has to now buckle up. You also know many people in India, even after they have their college degree, university degree, they don't have the kind of skills to get the jobs. When the companies hire them, the companies have to give them a separate training just to learn what to have to do. So that has to be the focus. We have to ensure that our population remains healthy. There is proper nutrition given to them, because again, if the population is not healthy, number one, you would not be able to take part in the workforce, and second, you would become a burden on the government itself. Government has to focus on increasing their productivity. Government also has to ensure that climate challenge that is happening in India, climate change related challenges are focused on. There is also a problem of state-wise issues. See, in India also, there are different types of numbers if you look at different states. For example, in Kerala, because the social indicators are higher, states such as Kerala, Tamil Nadu, they have already reduced their fertility rate. So in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, majority of the population is not in the young working age. In states such as Kerala, Tamil Nadu, a lot of people are in the older age period now, like a developed nation. On the other hand, look at states such as UP, Bihar, etc., where a lot of people still are in the working age population. So there is a state-wise disparity as well that we are seeing. We also have to ensure that more and more women come out and become a part of the workforce, because the problem here is, even if we have a very high population who's in the young working age, if half of them, let's say women, are not working or not allowed to work, then it is a big disadvantage. So more and more options should be given to come out and work, because only then we can have proper economic development in the long run. These are challenges that India is still facing. This is a kind of question that you can expect from here. Although India is on the right side of demographic transition, the opportunity window could easily slip out of hands if key challenges are ignored. Discuss. Now, this question is specifically asking you the challenges that we have. I discussed with you the challenges are these. This will be the main body of your question or your answer. The main body will be how to, and you can add one more point, that is skill development. Not a difficult question to answer. You will start in the introduction to give definition of what is demographic dividend or demographic transition. If you want, you can start with this definition, or if you want to start with a fact, you can write about China, that ever since China's population decline has come in news, India and the focus on India's demographic dividend has been at the center of the world. That can be your introduction as well. So either you start with a fact about why is the topic in the news with respect to China, or you can start about the demographic dividend as well. Whichever one that you want to remember, that whichever one that you want to go with, it depends entirely upon you. Main body will be about the challenges. We just discussed about the challenges. These are the challenges that we have. State-wise disparity still remains in India's states. Also, we have to ensure that more and more young people go participate in the economy. Women have to be encouraged to become a part of the workforce so that we can have more economic output from them. We have to focus on skill development initiatives as well. You have to focus on education, healthcare to keep the population healthy. All these things are the challenges that we are facing. Since this is a question where you mainly have to write about the challenges in the main body, the conclusion can easily be the way forward. As I told you in the first question itself, when you have to write mainly about the negative points, conclusion is the easiest to write. In the conclusion, you can say, yes, if these challenges are overcome by the government, or the government is successful in overcoming these challenges, India can truly become the world leader that we are aspiring to become. These kind of things. Or you can write in the conclusion that if India is hoping to become the major exporter of skill around the world, we need to solve these challenges first to take our position as a world leader. All these kind of options you have in terms of conclusion. I don't think it's a very difficult question to attempt. You have the content, you have the understanding, you can go ahead and write that as well. Let me quickly take up a few questions that we have. First, how can basic structure can be changed those parliament has any role? No, the entire point of basic structure is that the parliament cannot change it. So parliament has no role in that. Then I have a question. Is it right to say that population cycle can only be delayed and not stopped? If yes, we will also face the same problem like China. Yes, obviously, see, every country will eventually face these problems. If you remember when COVID-19 started, the first country that had a lot of deaths was Italy. Remember the first wave of COVID-19, we were so scared, and Italy was the one that had all these deaths. That was mainly because their average age is very high. So eventually, when you come in a situation where the average age is higher, you will enter this problem. How nations such as USA, etc., or UK deal with this is that they're very open to immigration. So, for example, when you know that you can't have a lot of young people now, you have to become such an attractive economy from where you can expect youngsters from other countries to come in and become part of your workforce. That is the only way forward. You can't forcefully artificially change your population patterns. Every country will go through this. The reason why countries like US, UK, they don't face these issues is because they're open to a lot of immigration. They're attractive for youngsters from around the world. So either for study or for job, many people do come to these nations. Frida saying in the end of the webinar, give some tricks to learn government schemes. I don't have any tricks to learn government schemes. I can just tell you what do you have to learn in government schemes. In any government scheme, just try to remember, I'll tell you what do you have to remember in government. Every government scheme, just try to remember the ministry behind the scheme, which is the ministry running it. Second, what is their target? Target means target audience, basically. For example, is it about pregnant women, old women, tribal? What is the target audience? Third, is it rural or urban? And fourth, what is their aim in the end? What do they want to achieve? Just remember these four things, you are good to go. You can make a table also with all the government schemes that you read in your current affair magazine. In the table, just write these: ministry, target audience, who are they targeting, Are they rural in or urban, especially, or what is their aim? As simple as that. Okay, then I will take up a question from Mevash. The question: how to prepare such scheme from prelims point of view? Current Affair magazine. As simple as that. Then I have a question from Meena. Sir, not only skill development is required, skill recognition is also necessary. India has many talented people, but they are not recognized because of corruption and a lot of factors. See, corruption, there are, you can say there's corruption at the government level. In the private sector, I don't think there will be a lot of corruption. In the private sector, since the company wants to make as much profit as possible, they would obviously employ people who are the best skilled. Yes, I can accept your point. There is corruption mainly in the public sector, but I don't think a lot of it exists in the private sector. Although there is still some problem in the private sector, but I don't think the private sector would actually not recognize your skills. Now we have so many platforms where you can reach out to as many companies as possible. So I think that is not really big of an issue. Amit is saying, yes, decline was there, but if China had more working population, then decline could be called good. If they have more working population, how the population will decline? The two things can't happen together, right? Okay, one last question from this topic. Baliram is saying, if birth rate will come down, then after some day country will disappear. No, how will it disappear? Birth rate will not come down to zero. Na? For the country to disappear, the birth rate will have to come down to zero. That will not happen, don't worry. At least not in your generation. Till the time that you are alive, you live your entire life, the country is not disappearing till you are here. Okay, let's move ahead then. Next topic I want to discuss is India as the leader of the Global South. Why are we discussing this? What is the issue all about? What is Global South? Let's first discuss this. Usually, and if you are from political science background, political science optional, you read about it quite a lot. Global South in simple terms means developing nations. So those nations who are developing are called Global South. Global North, on the other hand, means the developed nations. Now, why is this topic in the news? Why is it important? See, India, as you know, is the G20 president. Because India has a G20 presidency and India is a developing nation, and most of the G20 nations are developed nations, it gives a chance for India to put forward the agenda of the developing nations, because the host nation decides the points of discussion in simple terms. Now, there are a few things that you have to understand here. First, there is no official definition of what is a developing nation and what is a developed nation. There is no definition of that. In other words, if tomorrow Prime Minister says, I want to address the nation at 8 p.m. and he says, Mitro, from today we are a developed nation, then nothing will happen. Nothing will change. We can become a developed nation if we want tomorrow itself. It is just about you calling yourself what do you want to call. It is we who call ourselves developing nations. If tomorrow we want to call ourselves a developed nation, that is also possible. No one is stopping us. There is no definition by UN, no definition by WTO, nothing. In fact, when Donald Trump was the US president, he was angry with India because of the same. He was saying India, China, these are developed nations. They are just telling a lie because they want to take advantage of our schemes. We are running scheme for poor nation. They are taking advantage. They should be called developed nations. So the reason is there is no definition of developed and developing. So why do we want to call us a developing nation? The reason are various. Many developed nations want to run these schemes where they help developing nations get loans. Japan, for example, gives us a lot of loans, soft loans at a very small rate of interest. World Bank gives us loans at a smaller rate of interest. So it is advantageous right now to be a developing nation because we get help from other nations, as simple as that. So we want to remain in this category. Even China is a developing nation. They call themselves a developing nation. Although China's per capita income is 5 times that of India. India's per capita income is close to $2,100. China's per capita income is over $10,000, but they still call themselves a developing nation. So who are we? We'll also be developing nation only. So the reason why it is in the news is there was a virtual summit held of Global South. The summit was a summit where developing nations around the world took part. Usually these nations were part of the non-aligned movement also. So this was a summit where India also gave a speech, or Indian Prime Minister also gave a speech where he talked about the fact that the global south has to come together. Now, what is global south has to do with coming together, and what is the point here? Whenever we have international summits, let's say we have a WTO summit, the World Trade Organization. When we have summits such as WTO, UN summit, climate change issue, etc., usually we have two groups, developing nations and developed nations. Developed nations want something else, developing nations want something else. For example, when you talk about climate change, in terms of climate change, developing nations say that developed nations were the ones who polluted the environment. It is because the developed nations, because of their manufacturing, their industrialization, that we have so much pollution. So developed nations such as US, UK, they should shut down their factory. They should give us the money. Developed nations say, no, whatever happened has happened in the past. Talk about today. Today you are polluting more, so you should shut down your factory. So there is always this big debate between developing and developed nations. Look at the WTO. At the WTO, developed nations say that developing nations should not give subsidy to their farmers. They should not give free food to their people. Developing nations say we have to do that. It is our poor population. We have to take care of them. So there is a big global north versus south divide, where north is developed and south is developing. India is usually, now no one has said this, but usually India is considered as a leader of the global south, or one of the leaders of the global south. It is seen as one of those countries who is a developing nation, but it gets a lot of respect from developed nations also. And it is true. We are the president of G20 right now. We take part in a lot of international summits. We interact with the most powerful nations in the world. So India is expected to be the bridge between the two. India is expected to represent the developing nations and their issues at the platform where the developed nations come. Because usually, just understand this, if there are some very small nations, developing nations, African nations or Asian nations who are developing, USA will not give them a lot of time. They can't, their president can't go to USA, I want to talk to American president. Their president or their prime minister won't have a lot of time to speak in the UN. But India will have that. So the expectation is India should become the voice or representative of these developing nations, these small powerless nations, so that we can take forward their pointers and enter it or put it at the world forum. Now, there are a lot of issues with the global south. Global south issues means the issues with developing nations India also faces. Economic inequality, you all know there are these kind of reports that come out. Recently also the Oxfam report came out that 1% of population has this much percentage of wealth. But economic inequality is a concern in developed nations also. Few rich people who are closer to the government have much more money, much more power with them, obviously. There's a question of political instability as well. Now, India is lucky not to have these issues, but just imagine this. Look at one by one all the countries that are surrounding India. Just look at them one by one. Okay. Let's start with China. There is China. Come down, there is Nepal. I'm not counting Bhutan. Then come down, there is Bangladesh. Then come down, we are going in the clockwise fashion. Okay. Then come down, there is Sri Lanka. Then come down, there's Maldives. Let's count them also. We're going clockwise. Then go to Pakistan. Yes, Myanmar. Sorry, I forgot. Thank you, Chaitanya, for reminding Myanmar and Lava. So there's Myanmar also. After Pakistan, let's talk about Afghanistan also. Now, just look at these countries one by one. None of these countries except India can say we always have had a successful democracy. No one. China, not a democracy at all. One party, they can do whatever they want. Nepal has had a history of political instability. No prime minister completes even 2 years in Nepal. See the time in which they change their prime ministers. They have had to make their new constitution just a few years back. Their constitution was not working. Myanmar, still under military rule. We know that. Bangladesh, Just after their independence, there was a political assassination in Bangladesh where the military assassinated, killed Mujibur Rahman, and his entire family was killed. He was a prime minister, he was killed by the military. His daughter, Sheikh Hasina, got saved because she was in Germany. She is the prime minister right now. So there was an overthrow. Sri Lanka, they have had to make a new constitution. Their constitution was not proper. Maldives, we saw military overthrow. India saved them, thankfully, but there was military, there was people from LTTE who wanted to overthrow the government. India saved them in Operation Cactus. Pakistan, no words for Pakistan. In the history of Pakistan, no elected prime minister has even completed a 5-year tenure. Never. Just imagine that. No elected prime minister of Pakistan has ever completed a 5-year tenure. So you can imagine that. Afghanistan, no words. In all of this, and I'm not taking up the case of Bhutan because Bhutan has a king. So let's leave Bhutan for now. In all of these, the only exception you will see in South Asia is India. The only exception. Yes, there are issues of corruption. Yes, there are other issues as well. But we have never had a situation where a party has lost election and has said, no, I will not accept this. We have never had this situation. You criticize the election commission, you criticize the EVM, but in the end, they accept the result and we move on. We take it for granted. We think it is normal. But see, this is not normal. See, this is not normal. We have taken a complete round of our neighborhood, one by one, clockwise. Just see this. This is not normal what happens in India. So we are blessed with that we do not have this political instability, but most developing nations have this political instability. There is lack of infrastructure that we have. Lack of infrastructure, again, is a problem with most developing nations. The issue being a high population and low tax collection. Even when you compare it with US, UK, the reason why they have better infrastructure is their population is lesser. They have been developing it for a long time. See, many times when people compare India with US, it is very laughable. You can't compare India and US. USA, first, such a bigger country, lot more resources. Their independence is close to 250 years. Close to 250 years they have been independent. Ours is not even 80 years. So there's no point of comparison between the two. The climate change issues still exist mostly in developing nations. The reason being, climate change requires a lot of investment to shift to other forms of energy, renewable energy. So they don't have that investment. So this is an issue. And limited human capacity. Again, skill development needs to be focused on. Not just this, we also have to put more money on research and development. All of these issues still remain. And that is why the global south is not being able to fulfill the potential. These are the problems that we are facing, because of which they are not able to rectify the challenges. Lack a unified stance means developing nation is not able to come together to demand what they want. So they lack a proper leadership. The Green Energy Fund, they have been demanding more money from developed nations to fight against climate change, which has not been given to them. China has been interfering in a lot of these nations. The simple rule is, if a nation wants a loan for a project, which no one is giving them, World Bank is not giving them, saying that this is not a good project, you will not earn money. No bank is giving them a loan, then go to China, they will give you the loan. Because they are looking for those projects where the money will not come back so they can acquire the property. See what happened in Sri Lanka, Hambantota Port, Djibouti. Sri Lanka almost owns the entire country. Look at the different countries where China has been giving the loan. Look at Montenegro, a small country in Europe, almost owned by China now. China's interference still remains. The interference of developed nation also exists in most of developing nations. When they invest money, they call the shots in politics. They have not been able to utilize their resources. This is very interesting, actually. A lot of developing nations have a lot of mineral resources, but they have not been able to utilize that properly because of corruption, political instability, and that is why the global south or developing nations are still facing those issues. Now, the way forward in the answer, I'm just giving you proper structure to the question, to the answer also. The way forward has to be have more sustainable solutions, fight against climate change properly, balance the feeling of nationalism and internationalism. So, nationalism means, for example, it is good to take pride in your country. It is always good. I love my country. I'm proud of my country. All that is fine. But to say I or ours is the best country, no country can even come close to each other, that is not how it works. We are living in a globalized era where the countries have to work together. Yes, you can say that our market should be safeguarded. We will not sign free trade agreements, but you have to be open to international trade as well. So there has to be a balance between nationalism and internationalism. Means give encouragement to your local industry, but at the same time also have doors open for international products to come in so that they can learn from competition as well. The developing nation need to trust each other because we have not had a lot of help from developed nations. And this is usually a topic in PSIR also that you study, that rather than depending on north-south collaboration, we should rather focus on south-south collaboration. South-south collaboration means that developing nations should come together to help each other. And that is actually that is actually taking place. For example, India runs a program called ITEC. I don't know how many of you know about this. India runs a program called ITEC. This has been running for a very long time, under which we help a lot of developing nations. We give scholarships to their students, we give training to their farmers, we help them in a lot of different ways. The ITEC program. So this is again an example of developing nations coming together. The G20 also presents an opportunity where India right now is a president, where we can take forward the agenda of the developing nations so that the developed world also realizes that it is their responsibility to help the developing nations. This is a question and I expect you to be able to write an answer here. The ITEC program, as I told you, is a program run by the Indian government since 1960s, sorry. From that time period, we have been running the program under which we give a lot of help to developing nations. For example, in a lot of universities in India, you would see students from Afghanistan studying, students from many African nations studying, who have been given scholarships from the Indian government. So Indian government gives them scholarships. Then we also have, for example, our India has achieved a lot of progress in agriculture. Our farmers know a lot of techniques that many people don't know. So we send a lot of our teams to train farmers of other nations to grow more products, etc. From under all that, government spends a lot of money. That is called ITEC. People are asking for full form. This is called Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation. Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation. This is the ITEC program under which India helps a lot of nations from developing nations. This is an example of South-South Connect. So in this question, in this answer, you can actually give examples of ITEC. You can give examples of how, and I'll give you some pointers. Give example of ITEC, give example of how India has been representing the developing world in climate change talks also. Whenever we have climate change talks, India talks from the side of developing nations. Not just this, at WTO, whenever we have the food security debate. Food security debate means when the developed nations say that you should not give free food to our poor people, that also is something that the WTO or India takes forward and puts on record in WTO. So there are multiple examples of how India has been helping developing nations. You can give examples of even in our neighborhood, how India has been helping multiple nations, extending them lines of credit, be it Nepal, be it Bangladesh, be it Vietnam. We have been helping a lot of these nations with their defense cooperation, etc. I'll give you one more example. Thank you, Mahesh. I'll give you one more example. So usually when nations have these military exercises, nations want to have military exercises, powerful nations, so they can learn from their army. So many big nations ignore the small nations. They don't have military exercises with them. But India does not do that. We hold a lot of military exercises with small nations as well, be it Nepal, be it Maldives, be it Sri Lanka. We hold exercises with smaller nations as well. This again is an example of South-South collaboration. So India does accept the role of a leader of the global South, and we do ensure that we do complete justice to that as well. You will get the PPT in which I've given you the complete structure of this answer as well, which you can read. Again, there are multiple examples that you can quote. I've written all about those examples over here. And there are multiple examples. I've just given you a few of them. If you just think about that, you can get a lot of examples. Rahul, for example, has given an example. Vaccine Maitri is an example. Yes, go ahead with that. Election Commission of India, for example, trains a lot of smaller nations of how to conduct proper elections. So these are very, very different, varied examples that you can actually go ahead and write. Perfect. The last topic for today is the Satluj Yamuna Canal, a topic that is very old, a topic that just comes in the news every few months. And I'll tell you why it comes in the news. It comes in the news because Punjab keeps on saying we don't have any water to give, or it comes in the news because Haryana says we want water. This is the simplest of the news. Now, what is this issue all about? Let's try and understand this. The issue is very simple. Since Haryana came into being in 1966, whenever you have creation of a new state, there are many problems. You have to divide your resources, divide the money, etc. But one problem is you cannot divide river. You can divide other things as well, but you cannot divide river. So when this happened, when Punjab actually got here or got different resources, Haryana became a different state altogether. Haryana demanded the river that goes through, the Satluj River. We want some water from Satluj River to our state as well. Build a canal, so some water from Satluj will go to Yamuna and Haryana will use it. Simple. This was 1966 when the demand started. And today is 2023. The program was finalized, plan was finalized, but so far it has not been implemented. I'll show you a map first and then we'll come back here. If you see, this is the entire idea. So this is a Satluj River that you can see here. The idea was there will be a canal that will be built. This will be the canal, which will carry some water from Satluj to Yamuna so that Punjab can give some water to Haryana. That is the entire idea. Okay. What has happened? From this side, this is the canal that is already completed because this is Haryana's portion. So Haryana has already completed this. Haryana has already built this many, many years ago. Punjab had to build this part. This is Punjab's area. So Punjab had the responsibility to build this, but Punjab has still not built this. Many years have passed. Punjab has not built this canal. Why? They simply say we do not have enough water. How can we give you? The project started many years ago. Supreme Court has even come in the picture. Government of India has come in the picture. But even then, the canal is just not being built. And Punjab has good reasons for it. Punjab says, see, we are an agrarian state. Our farmers produce the most amount of agriculture produce for the entire country. So how can we give water to Haryana? Our farmers will not be able to utilize that. Now, Haryana says, what about our farmers? What about our people? We also need to get water for them. So Punjab says that if you are able to do your job till today, you can do it in the future as well. But that is not how it works. If a state is divided, there has to be division of water resources as well because you have divided the population. But that has not been done. If you look at the history, as I told you, it's a long history. 1966, creation of Haryana. 1981, both sides agreed, okay, we will reallocate water. And the canal construction even started in 1982. Just imagine that. Over 40 years have passed, 40, and even then it is not happening. And this is a very unique kind of a problem. Usually you will see in any state, some party will accept or will actually agree to a certain agreement, some other party will say no. But in Punjab, every political party has the same view that we cannot give water. Every few years, in fact, a few years back, entire Punjab Assembly passed a resolution that we cannot give any water, in which all the parties voted yes. So the reason why it is not being implemented is that even parties in the opposition, parties in the government, doesn't matter which party in Punjab, everyone says we don't have water. Now, you might say, why is the central government not doing anything? Because the central government also someday wants to come in power in Punjab, right? So all the parties know if they decide to give water from Punjab to Haryana, they will never come to power in Punjab, because the people would think that these are the ones who have given our water to the different states, so we don't want them in power. Supreme Court in 2002 for the first time directed Punjab to complete the work in this canal, but they did not do that. In 2004, Punjab Assembly, in fact, passed Punjab Termination of Agreement Act, terminating any agreement that they've signed with Haryana on this issue. The Supreme Court has been hearing this matter time and time again. Supreme Court, in fact, has said that this act is unconstitutional. So we cannot have this. But again, the two sides have not been able to come to a conclusion. SYL, yes, SME is already there. SYL, wherever it is written, it is called Satluj Yamuna Link Canal, the canal that we are talking about. So the reason why it is again in the news is Punjab has again said we do not have enough water. Now, the issue is, it is not the only case in India of states not being happy with the division of water. Punjab is saying our primary agriculture products are wheat and rice. They require a lot of water. We already are short of underground water for irrigation purposes. How can we give you water? Haryana, on the other hand, is saying that we have to give water to Delhi also. See, rivers don't stop at one single state, right? They flow ahead. So if one state is stopping water, what about all the other states that are in the path? Haryana says we have to give water to Delhi also. We can't say no. So you have to provide us with certain support. So both the states are somewhere right. The solution lies in having better usage of water. There have been so much talks about the need for farmers to switch towards those crops that don't consume so much water, to stop over exploitation of water. But that has also not happened. The government of India or the state government have to encourage and push farmers towards other crops which do not have so much water. For example, I'll just give you a very simple example. India has so much excess rice. States such as Punjab, etc., grow a lot of rice every single year. Now, when we have so much rice, the problem here is that rice need a lot of water. So we have kept all that extra rice in our godowns. Now, India is also a big exporter of rice. Now, just imagine if we export rice to US and UK, we are not just exporting rice, we are exporting our groundwater also. Do you understand this? When we grow rice that we did not need, we are using our groundwater. When we are exporting that rice, we are exporting our groundwater actually, indirectly. Water is the most important commodity right now in the world. And when you are exporting that to some other country, this is where the problem starts. The blame has to go with the government as well. The governments have tried to encourage farmers to grow something else, but unless you give assurance to the farmer that your income will not be cut, we will buy whatever you are actually growing. Unless that happens, the farmers can't be expected to switch from wheat and rice to something else. Think of it from the farmer's point of view. If he is able to grow wheat and rice and sell it to the Food Corporation of India, why would he take a chance and grow something else all of a sudden? He's happy doing that. Why would he grow avocado or why would he grow something else? So the government has to give an assurance that we will buy it. They have not been able to do that, and that is why the government has not been able to fulfill or solve this issue. Now, this is the kind of question that you could expect. What are the constitutional and legal provisions for resolution of interstate water disputes, and discuss issues about the same? Now, interstate water disputes is a very common problem in India. As I told you, there are so many examples. There's a Kaveri River dispute that just is not resolved. Karnataka, Tamil Nadu still fighting over it. India, as a growing population country, as an agrarian country, where we grow most of our agriculture products in India rather than importing it from outside, will always have this problem of shortage of water. The problem here is, how do the states come together and resolve this? Now, in this PPT, I have given you enough content to write this answer as well. I've given you multiple pointers from the constitution, from the laws that have been passed, so that you can write an answer. This is the structure, as I told you: introduce, explain, and then conclude. Start by writing the introduction part. You can start with a fact. The fact can be about Part 11 of the Constitution, talks about relation between union and states, and here you can talk about interstate, union state disputes. I've given you some example from Article 262, Article 131, where the Supreme Court can come in between. Then issues about interstate dispute, there are multiple examples that you can quote, which you can go ahead with. Again, there's enough content here for you to write your own answer. Feel free to add other content as well. This is just a help from my side. Conclusion of this will be the homework. Again, you will get the PPT, so you please don't ask me to go back to the slide. You will get the PPT. You can watch the slide whenever you want the entire night. Okay. Let me quickly take up a few questions and then we can end this session. Raza is saying, even the Supreme Court is unable to broker a resolution to interstate disputes. How can the aspirant think of a way forward? In the way forward, you are not expected to write the solution. In the way forward, you only expect to write that the solution has to be amicable. All the stakeholders have to be brought to the table, and only then the solution should be found. You're not expected that in 200 lines you can solve and give a solution to a problem that is 200 years old. So don't worry, you're not expected to do that, but you're expected to at least have sense that an amicable solution has to be done, rather than one side forcefully accepting a solution over the other. Simple. Perfect. This was okay. These were the questions that were given to me. This brings me to the end of the session. I hope this was helpful. I hope you got to know about the structure of the answers. I hope that you will try and write certain answers. You can always send it to targeties@byju's.com to get your answers checked as well. We'll see each other very soon in the upcoming webinars. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Good night. Jai Hind.